The first time I heard my own voice, I thought it was coming from the television. I was in the kitchen, standing by the sink, holding a glass I had already washed twice without realizing it. The afternoon light was soft, slipping through the curtains in a way that made everything feel quieter than usual. I remember thinking how still the house felt. Too still. Then I heard it, my voice. Calm, measured, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I don't think I can manage things the way I used to. I froze. The glass slipped slightly in my hand, tapping against the edge of the sink. For a moment, I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I simply listened. It's getting harder to remember details. I forget things, important things. I turned slowly toward the living room. The television was off. There was no radio playing, no phone call, no open window carrying in a neighbor's conversation. Nothing, and yet I had heard it. Clearly, my voice, saying words I had never spoken. I walked into the living room, my steps careful, almost hesitant, as if I were afraid of disturbing something invisible. The space looked exactly as I had left it, my chair by the window. The small table with my reading glasses resting neatly on top. The blanket folded over the armrest. Everything in place, everything normal, but something was. I stood there for a long moment, trying to make sense of it, trying to convince myself it had been nothing more than a passing confusion, a trick of the mind, a memory overlapping with reality. It happens, I told myself. At my age, small moments like that, they happen. But deep down, something resisted that explanation, because I knew my voice, and I knew those words were not mine. That evening my daughter called. Her voice was warm, attentive, almost overly gentle. "How are you feeling today?" she asked. The question lingered a little too long. "I'm fine," I said. "Why wouldn't I be?" There was a pause, not long but enough. "Oh, nothing," she replied lightly. "I just wanted to check in." I leaned back in my chair, my fingers resting on the armrest. "You've been checking in quite a lot lately." Another pause. "I worry about you," she said. I smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it. "You never used to." That made her laugh, but it wasn't a natural laugh. It came too quickly, like something placed carefully into the conversation rather than felt. "Well," she said, "things change." Yes, I thought, they do. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a while. The house had returned to its quiet state, but it didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt watched, not in a physical sense, not like someone was standing behind a door or looking through a window. Something else, something harder to explain. As if parts of my life were no longer entirely mine. The next morning, I found the first real sign. It was small, so small that most people would have dismissed it immediately. My notebook. I keep a notebook on the kitchen counter. Nothing special. Just a place where I write down things I don't want to forget. Appointments, reminders, small thoughts that come and go during the day. I reached for it to note down a grocery item. Milk, simple, but when I opened it, my hand stopped. There was writing on the page, neat, careful, familiar, too familiar. I agreed to let them help me manage my affairs. I stared at the sentence. My heart didn't race, not at first. It simply slowed. I turned the page, more writing. I don't feel safe handling things alone anymore. I closed the notebook, very gently. Then I opened it again. The words were still there, my handwriting, every curve, every detail. It was mine. But I hadn't written it. I knew I hadn't. I stood there for a long time, the notebook open in my hands, the morning light falling across the page as if trying to expose something hidden within it. There are moments in life when something shifts quietly, without noise or warning. That was one of them. Because in that moment, I understood something that I hadn't wanted to consider the day before. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't forgetfulness. Someone was creating a version of me, a version that said things I never said, agreed to things I never agreed to. And somehow, it was convincing enough to look real. Later that day, my daughter came by. She didn't tell me she was coming. She simply arrived, letting herself in with the spare key she had insisted on keeping for emergencies. She walked in with a soft smile, carrying a small bag. "I brought you some things," she said. "Just little essentials." I watched her carefully. Her movements were confident, familiar, but there was something else now, something beneath the surface. A quiet sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. You didn't have to, I said. I know, she replied. I wanted to. She placed the bag on the kitchen counter, right beside the notebook. For a brief moment her eyes glanced at it, then back to me. It was subtle, but I noticed. We sat together for a while, she talked about small things, the weather, her work. A neighbor I barely remembered. Then, gently, she said, "Do you remember what we talked about yesterday?" I looked at her. "No," I said. She nodded slowly, as if expecting that answer. "That's okay," she said softly. "We talked about you needing a little help just to make things easier." I said nothing. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device, a phone, not mine. She tapped the screen, then held it out slightly, as if preparing to show me something. "There's nothing to worry about," she said. "I just want you to hear this." My chest tightened. Without thinking, I stood up. "I don't want to hear anything," I said. Her expression didn't change, not fully, but something in her eyes shifted, just for a second. Then she smiled again. "It's just your voice," she said gently. And in that moment, I knew. The voice I had heard the day before, the words in the notebook. They weren't accidents, they were pieces of something. Something being built. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Not confusion, not doubt, but a quiet, steady fear. Because if someone could make it look like I had said things I never said, then what else could they make people believe? I didn't sit back down. Something in me refused to return to that chair, to that calm, polite position she seemed to expect from me. I stayed standing, one hand resting lightly on the back of the chair, as if I needed something solid to hold on to. "You can put that away," I said quietly. She hesitated, only for a moment. Then she lowered the phone slightly, but she didn't turn it off. "I think it would help you understand," she said. Her tone was still soft, still patient, but now there was something else beneath it. A kind of certainty, as if she already knew how this would end. "I understand enough," I replied. She studied my face for a few seconds, searching for something, weakness perhaps, confusion. Agreement, she didn't find it, so she changed her approach. "You've been saying things," she continued gently. "Things that worry me." "I haven't," I said. Her smile tightened just slightly. "You don't remember," she corrected. That word lingered in the air between us. Remember. It was the easiest way to take something from someone. You didn't have to prove anything. You just had to suggest they had forgotten. I said nothing. Instead, I reached for the notebook. Slowly, deliberately, I opened it and turned it toward her. "These?" I asked. Her eyes moved to the page. She didn't look surprised. "That's your handwriting," she said. "Yes," I replied. "It is." "And you don't remember writing it?" I held her gaze. "No," I said. "Because I didn't." Another pause, this one longer, more careful. She stepped closer, her expression softening again, almost sympathetic now. "That's exactly what I mean," she said. "You don't realize it's happening." There it was, the conclusion already prepared. I closed the notebook. "Who else has seen this?" I asked. Her eyes flickered just for a second. "No one," she said. "It's just between us." I nodded slowly. "I see." But I didn't, not fully, not yet. What I did see was this: she wasn't surprised by anything. Not the voice, not the notebook, not my reaction. Which meant this wasn't new to her. She had expected this moment, prepared for it. And that meant there were things already in motion that I didn't know about. I placed the notebook back on the counter. "I think you should go," I said. That surprised her. Her posture shifted just slightly. "I just got here," she replied. "I know, and you're upset," she added gently. "We shouldn't make decisions when you're upset." I looked at her, calmly. "I'm not upset," I said. "I'm paying attention." Something in that answer unsettled her, not enough to break her composure, but enough to make her step back. "I'll come by tomorrow," she said after a moment. "We can talk then, when you've had time to rest." I didn't respond. She picked up her bag, hesitated near the door, then added, almost casually, "Try to write things down if you can. It helps track patterns." Then she left. The door closed softly behind her, and just like that, the house was quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. This one felt watched, measured. as if everything I did from that moment forward mattered in ways I didn't yet understand. I didn't move for a long time. Then, slowly, I walked back to the counter and picked up the notebook again. I studied the writing, line by line. Every letter was mine, or at least it looked like it. But there was something off, not obvious, not enough for someone glancing quickly to notice. But I had written in that notebook for years, and small things don't escape you when they belong to your own hand. The spacing between certain words, the way the letters leaned, subtle differences. Not mistakes, but imitations, careful ones. Whoever had written this had studied my writing, not guessed, studied. That thought settled heavily in my chest. I turned the page again, more sentences. More agreements, more quiet confessions of weakness, each one reinforcing the same idea, that I couldn't manage, that I needed help, that I had already accepted it. I closed the notebook slowly. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I locked it away. Not in a drawer, not somewhere obvious, but in the small cabinet above the pantry, the one I rarely used. I needed to see what would happen next, because if someone was writing in it, they would come back. That night I didn't sleep much. Every sound in the house felt sharper, the ticking clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, even the soft creak of the floor as the temperature shifted. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. The voice, the notebook. My daughter's calm certainty, and one thought kept returning. If she had recordings, then there had to be more. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. The house felt colder. Or maybe it was just me. I went to the kitchen. The counter was exactly as I had left it. The notebook was gone from sight, hidden, untouched, at least from what I could see. I made myself a cup of tea, though I barely drank it. Then I sat down and waited, not for her, but for something else, some sign, something that would confirm what I already suspected. It came sooner than I expected. A knock at the door, not hers, different, more official, measured. I stood up slowly and walked toward it. When I opened the door, two people stood outside. A man and a woman, both dressed neatly, professionally. The woman offered a polite smile. "Good morning," she said. "We're here to follow up on your request." I felt something inside me go very still. "My request," I repeated. The man nodded, glancing down at a tablet in his hands. "Yes," he said. "Regarding assistance with managing your daily affairs." There it was, out in the open. I looked at them, then past them. The street was quiet, normal, as if nothing unusual was happening. But something had already begun moving beyond this house, beyond me. "I didn't make any request," I said. The woman's smile didn't fade. "We understand this can feel confusing," she replied gently. "That's why we're here to help." Help, the same word, repeated, reinforced, carefully chosen. I stepped back slightly, my hand still on the door. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. The man looked at the tablet again. "No mistake," he said. "We have documented confirmation." Documented. Confirmation, words that don't exist without proof, or something that looks like proof. The woman took a small step forward. "Would it be all right if we came in and talked for a few minutes?" I looked at her, at both of them, then back inside my house, at my kitchen, my chair, my life. And for the first time, I understood the shape of it, not fully, but enough. This wasn't just something happening inside my home anymore. It had moved outward, into systems, into records, into places where truth isn't questioned, only verified. And someone had already started verifying a version of me that didn't exist. I tightened my grip on the door. "No," I said. The word came out calm, steady, clear. Their expressions shifted, not dramatically, but enough, because that answer didn't match what they expected, and that meant one thing. The version of me they had been shown was supposed to agree. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about making me doubt myself. It was about making everyone else believe I already had. And if I didn't stop it, soon, it wouldn't matter what I said anymore. I didn't close the door immediately. For a brief moment, the three of us remained there, suspended in a quiet tension that felt almost polite on the surface, but was anything but. The woman's smile softened again, as if she were adjusting her approach. We understand that this might feel sudden, she said. That's very common, as if my situation were one of many. As if this exact moment had already played out countless times before. I'm not confused, I replied. The man glanced up from his tablet. No one said you were, he said evenly. But his tone suggested otherwise. Everything suggested otherwise. I kept my hand on the door. If I need help, I said, choosing each word carefully, I will ask for it. Another pause. This one heavier, because now they had to decide how far they were willing to push. The woman nodded slowly. Of course, she said. We're just here to make sure everything is in place based on what was submitted. Submitted. There it was again, something formal, something recorded, something that could be shown to others. By whom? I asked. The question landed quietly, but it changed something. The man hesitated this time, only slightly, but enough. It was submitted as a self-report, he said. I felt something tighten inside my chest. Self-report, as if I had done this to myself, as if I had already agreed. I nodded once. Then you can mark it as incorrect, I said. The woman and the man exchanged a quick glance, not long enough to be obvious, but long enough for me to notice. It's not that simple, she said gently. Of course it was. Nothing about this was simple. What isn't simple, I replied, is someone using my name without my consent. The man's fingers hovered slightly over the tablet. Do you have reason to believe that happened? He asked. I looked at him, then at her, and for a moment I considered telling them everything. The voice, the notebook, my daughter. But something stopped me. Not fear, not hesitation, something else, clarity, because I understood something important in that moment. If I said it now, without proof, it would sound exactly like what they already believed. Confusion, paranoia, memory problems. Everything would fit too easily into the version of me they had been given, so I shook my head slightly. I have reason to believe there's an error, I said, careful, neutral, controlled. The woman studied me for a few seconds longer than before, then she nodded. We'll make a note of that, she said, and we'll follow up, which meant this wasn't over, not even close. Thank you, I replied, and this time I closed the door, slowly, firmly. The lock clicked into place with a soft sound that felt louder than it should have. I stood there for a moment, my hand still resting against the door. Then I turned. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same, not anymore, because now I knew. This wasn't just inside my walls, it had already reached beyond them. Into systems, into records, into people who believed they were helping. I walked back to the kitchen. My eyes went immediately to the cabinet above the pantry. The notebook was still hidden, but now it felt like more than just paper. It felt like evidence, or a trap. I reached up, took it down, and opened it again. Carefully, slowly. The pages hadn't changed, not yet, but I knew they would. Whoever had written those lines hadn't finished. They were building something, piece by piece. A version of me that could be presented, accepted, signed off. And once that version was complete, it wouldn't matter what I said. Because everything would already be documented. Confirmed. I closed the notebook again. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the small desk in the corner of the living room. The one I used to use regularly, before everything became digital, automatic, effortless. Inside the drawer, beneath a stack of old papers, was a small device. Simple, outdated, but functional. A recorder. I turned it on. The small red light blinked to life. For a moment I just looked at it, then I spoke. My name is, I paused, steadying my voice, and today is Tuesday. I am alone in my home. I have not requested assistance from any external service. I stopped, listened, then I rewound it slightly and played it back. My voice filled the room, clear, real. Undeniable, not edited, not constructed. Mine. I let the recording play to the end. Then I set the device down gently. If they were building something, then so would I. But I wouldn't do it in the open. Not yet, because I needed to understand how far this had already gone. That afternoon my daughter returned. This time she knocked. Once, twice, patient, measured. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked quietly to the hallway and listened. No second person, no voices, just her. After a few seconds, I opened the door. She smiled. You didn't answer your phone, she said. I was busy, I replied. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Her eyes moved through the space quickly, subtle, but searching for what? I wondered, the notebook, something else. Did anyone come by earlier? She asked casually. There it was, too precise to be coincidence. I closed the door behind her. Yes, I said. Her expression didn't change. What did they say? I watched her carefully. They said I had asked for help, I replied. A small pause, then she nodded. That's good, she said, good. The word settled heavily between us. I didn't ask for help, I said. She sighed softly, stepping closer. I know you don't remember, she said. There it was again, always the same path. Always the same explanation. I shook my head. No, I said calmly. I remember very clearly not asking. Her eyes held mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her bag again. The phone, the same one. She tapped the screen. And this time she didn't wait, she pressed play. My voice filled the room, clear, steady, unmistakable. I don't feel comfortable handling my finances anymore. I felt something cold move through me, not panic, not fear, something sharper, because it was my voice, not just similar, not just convincing. Mine, but the words were not. I looked at her. She watched me closely, waiting, measuring, judging. Do you hear it? She asked softly. I nodded. Yes, I said. And I took a slow breath. Then I looked directly at her. That's my voice, I said. Relief flickered across her face, too quickly, because she thought that meant something, but I wasn't finished. It's my voice, I repeated calmly, saying something I never said. The relief disappeared, replaced by something else, something tighter, more controlled. That doesn't make sense, she said. It makes perfect sense, I replied. And in that moment, I saw it. Not clearly, not completely, but enough. This wasn't just imitation anymore. This was something deeper, something more precise. And if they had that, if they could reproduce my voice like that, then the notebook, the documents, the self-report, all of it could be built, perfectly, convincingly, completely. And suddenly, one thought became impossible to ignore. How long had this been happening, without me noticing? She didn't stop the recording immediately. She let it play a few seconds longer, as if giving the words time to settle inside me, to take root the way she expected they would. Then she tapped the screen and the room fell quiet again. You said that last week, she said. Her voice was calm. Certain. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked slowly past her toward the kitchen. I needed distance. Not from her exactly, but from the pressure of the moment she was trying to create. I didn't, I said. Behind me, I could feel her watching. You don't remember, she replied again. I turned, resting my hand lightly on the counter. No, I said, you need me not to remember. That landed differently, not loudly, not dramatically, but it landed. For the first time since this began, she didn't answer immediately. Her posture shifted slightly, the confidence in her shoulders tightening into something more controlled. That's not fair, she said after a moment. Fair, another careful word. I almost smiled. Neither is this, I replied. Silence filled the space between us again, but this time it felt different. Less like confusion, more like a quiet negotiation where neither of us was saying everything out loud. She set the phone down on the table. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she said. For who? I asked. For you, she answered quickly. But that wasn't the truth. I could see it now. This wasn't about making things easier for me. This was about making something easier for her. Or for whoever else was involved. I moved slowly toward the sink, picking up the glass I had left there earlier. It was dry now, clean, untouched. Who helped you? I asked. The question came out quietly, almost casually, but it changed everything. She looked at me, really looked this time, and for a brief second something slipped. Not guilt, not exactly, but awareness. Awareness that I was no longer following the path she had prepared. I don't know what you mean, she said. I nodded. Of course you do. I placed the glass down. You didn't create that, I continued, gesturing lightly toward the phone. Not alone. Her lips pressed together slightly. You're imagining things, she said. there it was again. Always the same direction, always the same exit. I stepped closer, not aggressively, just enough to make it clear that I wasn't stepping back anymore. Then explain it, I said. She didn't. Not right away, because there was nothing simple left to say, so instead she changed direction again. You're tired, she said softly. You didn't sleep well, did you? I held her gaze. No, I said, but not for the reason you think. Another pause, then she picked up the phone again. This isn't the only one, she said. That sentence settled in the room like a weight. Slow, heavy. Deliberate, I felt it before I fully understood it. How many? I asked. She hesitated just slightly. Enough, she replied, enough. That meant more than one, more than a mistake. More than a misunderstanding. A collection, a pattern, something built over time. My mind moved quickly now, connecting pieces. The notebook, the self-report, the people at the door. The recordings, all aligned, all reinforcing the same story. A version of me that had already started agreeing to things, before I ever had the chance to refuse. I stepped back again, creating space. Not out of fear, out of clarity. I want to hear them, I said. That surprised her. You do, she asked. Yes, she studied me carefully, trying to understand why. Trying to decide if this was a mistake. Then slowly she nodded. All right. She tapped the screen again, another recording, my voice. Different words this time. I think it's time someone else takes over. I closed my eyes briefly, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I needed to listen without distraction. The tone was perfect. The pauses were natural, even the small hesitations sounded real. Too real. When it ended, I opened my eyes. She was watching me closely. Well, she asked. I took a breath. That's not a recording, I said, her expression tightened. It is, she replied. No, I said calmly. It's constructed. She shook her head. You're refusing to accept what's happening. I almost laughed, not out of humor, out of recognition, because now I saw it clearly, the structure, the logic, the trap. If I denied it, I was confused. If I accepted it, I confirmed it. There was no path where I was simply right, unless I changed the ground entirely. I looked at her, very carefully. Play one more, I said. She hesitated again. But then she did, another voice clip, another sentence, another piece of a person I didn't recognize. When it ended, I nodded slowly. Then I walked past her toward the small desk in the living room. I opened the drawer, took out the recorder, turned it on. The red light blinked again. I held it up slightly. This is a recording, I said. Her eyes moved to it. A flicker of uncertainty passed through her. Just for a second, I pressed the button. My name is, I said again, clearly. And I have not, at any point, agreed to transfer control of my finances, my home, or my personal decisions to anyone. I let the silence settle. Then I stopped the recording, rewound it. Pressed play, my voice filled the room again. Simple, direct, unaltered, I looked at her. Now, I said calmly, let's compare. She didn't move, didn't speak. Because for the first time, the situation had shifted, just slightly, but enough. Because now there were two versions, the one she brought and the one I created. And only one of them had been made in front of her. I stepped closer, placing the recorder on the table between us. If this goes further, I said quietly, this is what they'll hear too. Her gaze dropped to the device, then back to me. Something in her expression changed again, not gone, not defeated. But no longer certain. And that was the first real crack I had seen, because now she understood something she hadn't before. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was documenting. And if she had help, then so did I now. Even if that help was just the truth, she didn't touch the recorder. For a long moment, her eyes stayed on it, as if it were something unfamiliar, something she hadn't prepared for. Then she looked back at me, and I saw it clearly this time. Not fear, calculation. You think that changes anything? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. She shook her head, slow and controlled. No, she replied. It doesn't. The certainty in her voice had returned, but it wasn't the same as before. It was sharper now, less gentle, less patient, more honest. I rested my hand lightly on the table, close to the recorder but not touching it. It changes what can be proven, I said. Her lips pressed together again. "You're assuming people will believe you," she said. "And you're assuming they won't," I answered. Another pause. Then she exhaled slowly and straightened her posture, as if deciding there was no point continuing the softer version of this conversation. "They already have reasons not to," she said. That sentence settled into the room with a weight that felt heavier than anything she had said before. I didn't react immediately. I let it sit. "Which people?" I asked. She held my gaze. "The ones who matter," she said. There it was. Not vague anymore, not implied. Clear, deliberate, something had already been set in motion beyond what I had seen this morning at the door. I felt my chest tighten slightly, but my voice stayed calm. "And what have they been told?" I asked. She hesitated, not because she didn't know, because she was choosing how much to reveal. "That you've been struggling," she said. "That you've been asking for help. That you've been inconsistent." Inconsistent. A word that sounds harmless until it's placed in the right context. I nodded slowly. "And the recordings?" I asked. "They support that," she replied. "Of course they do." Silence again, but now it was different. Because we were no longer circling around something unspoken. We were standing inside it. I moved away from the table and sat down in my chair by the window. Not because I felt weaker, but because I wanted to show her something. That I wasn't being pushed. That I could choose where I stood or sat. "You didn't expect me to question this," I said. She didn't answer, but her expression confirmed it. "No," I continued softly. "You expected me to doubt myself." Her jaw tightened slightly. "That would have been easier," she said. "Easier for her." For them, whoever them truly was. I leaned back in the chair, folding my hands calmly in my lap. "Who else is involved?" I asked. This time she didn't deflect immediately. Her eyes moved briefly toward the phone, then back to me. "It's not just me," she said, not a denial, not an admission, but enough. "How long?" I asked. Another pause. "Long enough," she said. I studied her face carefully, looking for something real, something that hadn't been rehearsed, and for a brief second I saw it, not regret, but pressure. As if this had grown into something larger than she had originally planned. "Why?" I asked. That question mattered more than anything else. Because everything up to this point, the recordings, the writing, the visits, all of it required effort. Planning. Coordination. People don't do that without a reason. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked slowly toward the window, standing a few steps away from me, her back partially turned. "It's about stability," she said. I almost smiled again. "Whose stability?" I asked. She turned slightly. "Yours," she said. "No," I replied quietly. "Try again." That landed because she didn't correct me. She didn't repeat it. Instead, she stayed silent. And that silence said more than any explanation she could have given. I let a few seconds pass, then I spoke again. "You've already taken steps," I said. "Documents, reports." "Recordings," she didn't deny it. "You've contacted people," I continued. "People who now believe something about me that isn't true." Still no denial. "And you think that if you keep going," I said, "eventually it won't matter what I say." Her eyes met mine again, and this time she didn't look away. "That's how these things work," she said. The honesty in that sentence was almost quiet, but it was absolute. I felt something settle inside me then. Not fear, not panic, something steadier. Because now I understood the structure completely. This wasn't about convincing me. It was about replacing me, replacing my voice, my decisions, my authority over my own life, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to defend. I leaned forward slightly. "And what happens next?" I asked. She hesitated, not because she didn't know, but because saying it out loud would make it real. "There will be another visit," she said. "More formal this time." I nodded. "Of course. They'll review everything," she continued. "The recordings, the written statements, the reports." I listened carefully. "And if they agree?" I asked. She held my gaze. "They'll assign oversight," she said. "Temporary at first." Temporary, a word that often becomes permanent once it's accepted. I let that sit for a moment, then I nodded again. "Thank you," I said. That surprised her. "For what?" she asked. "For finally telling me the truth." She didn't respond. Because she knew what that meant, I stood up slowly, walked to the table, picked up the recorder, slipped it back into my hand. I'm going to continue documenting everything, I said. Her eyes followed the movement. That won't be enough, she replied. Maybe not, I said calmly, but it's a start. I looked at her one last time. And you should understand something, I added quietly. She waited. This only works, I said, if I stay silent. A pause, longer this time, because she knew that was true. Every part of this plan relied on one thing: my absence, my hesitation, my doubt. And those were the only things I had left to lose. I moved toward the door, opened it. Are you asking me to leave? She said. No, I replied. I'm giving you the choice. She stood there for a moment, then she picked up her phone, her bag, and walked toward the door. When she reached it, she stopped. Think about what you're doing, she said. I looked at her. I have, I answered. She nodded once. Then she left. The door closed again. And this time, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt clear, because now I knew exactly what I was facing. Not confusion, not misunderstanding, something structured. Something deliberate. Something that had already begun to take shape around me, but it wasn't finished. Not yet. And as long as it wasn't finished, there was still time.